The freezing January morning when my older brother vanished from my life forever, I was standing on the tarmac of a private airstrip outside of Dallas, watching his private jet disappear into a sky the color of ash, holding a letter in my trembling hands that would explain everything he had done and everything he had hidden from me for the past 37 years, and as the roar of the engines faded into silence and the cold wind whipped through my thin jacket, I realized that the man I had idolized my entire life, the brother who had taught me to ride a bike and defended me from bullies and walked me down the aisle at my wedding, had been living a double life so elaborate and so devastating that I would spend the next 5 years trying to untangle the web of lies he had left behind. My name is Benjamin Foster, I'm 45 years old, and I haven't spoken to my older brother Daniel in exactly 5 years, 3 months, and 12 days. A number I know because I've carved it into the wooden desk where I write every morning, not because I'm obsessed with the passage of time, but because I need to remember that some wounds take longer to heal than others, and some betrayals are so profound that they change the very fabric of who you are. Daniel and I grew up in a modest house in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and the biggest news was when the local diner changed its menu, and from the time I could walk, Daniel was my hero, my protector, the person I looked up to more than anyone else in the world. He was 6 years older than me, and he took his role as big brother seriously, teaching me to throw a baseball, helping me with my homework, standing up for me when the older kids tried to push me around, and I worshipped him with the kind of fierce, unquestioning devotion that only a younger brother can feel. Our parents, Thomas and Margaret Foster, were good people, hard-working people, the kind who never had much money but always had enough love, and they raised us to believe that family was everything, that we would always have each other no matter what, that the bond between brothers was unbreakable and sacred and worth protecting at all costs. Daniel was the golden child, the one who excelled at everything he tried, the one who got straight A's without studying, the one who could charm anyone with his easy smile and quick wit, while I was the quiet one, the steady one, the one who worked twice as hard to achieve half as much, but I never resented him for it. I was proud of him, I was thrilled to be his brother. I was happy to stand in his shadow because his light was so bright that it made everything around him seem better. When Daniel left for college at 18, I was 12, and I remember standing on the porch of our house watching his car disappear down the street, feeling like a part of me was leaving with him, and I wrote him letters every week, long, detailed letters about my life and my dreams and my desperate need for his approval, and he always wrote back, always found the time to answer my questions and offer me advice and tell me that he was proud of me. He went to Harvard, then to Yale Law School, then to a prestigious firm in New York City where he became one of the youngest partners in the firm's history, and I followed his career with pride, telling everyone I met that my brother was a lawyer, a really good lawyer, the kind of lawyer who won cases that other lawyers said were unwinnable. I took a different path. I became a high school history teacher, a job that didn't pay much but gave me the kind of satisfaction that Daniel's high-powered career never seemed to provide, and I married my college sweetheart, Sarah, and we had 2 beautiful children, Emily and Thomas, and I built a quiet, contented life in the same small town where we had grown up. Daniel visited when he could, always in a rush, always with his phone buzzing and his mind on the next case, but when he was with us, he was fully present, playing with my kids, telling stories about our childhood, reminiscing about our parents who had passed away years ago, and I treasured those visits. I clung to them, because they reminded me that no matter how much time passed or how far apart our lives had taken us, we were still brothers, still connected by something deeper than distance or circumstance. He had no idea, not the slightest inkling, that the brother I loved and admired and trusted with my whole heart was hiding secrets so dark and so destructive that their revelation would tear my entire world apart, and I would spend years trying to understand how the person I had known my whole life could be a complete stranger wearing my brother's face. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of a phone call from a woman named Rebecca, a voice I didn't recognize, calling me at my home on a Sunday afternoon and asking if I was Daniel's brother, and when I said yes, She told me that Daniel had been having an affair with her for the past 3 years, that he had promised to leave his wife and marry her, that he had been lying to her just as thoroughly as he had been lying to everyone else in his life. I didn't believe her at first. I thought she was crazy, or mistaken, or trying to scam me somehow, because Daniel was the most ethical person I knew. He was a lawyer, for God's sake. A partner at one of the most prestigious firms in New York. He wouldn't do something like that. He couldn't do something like that. He was my brother and I knew him better than anyone. But then more calls came, more women, more accusations, more stories of promises made and broken, of lies told and discovered, of a man who had been living a double life for decades, juggling relationships and families and business deals with a skill that would have been impressive if it hadn't been so devastating. I confronted Daniel the next time he visited, sitting him down in my living room and asking him directly if any of it was true, and he looked at me with those familiar eyes, my brother's eyes, and he said, "Ben, I need you to trust me. I need you to believe me when I say that I have everything under control, that the women are lying, that this is all a misunderstanding that I'm going to clear up very soon." I wanted to believe him. God knows I wanted to believe him, because the alternative was too horrible to contemplate, because if Daniel was lying to me, then everything I believed about our relationship, about our family, about the very nature of trust and love, was built on a foundation of sand. He gave him the benefit of the doubt. I defended him to the people who called with accusations. I told myself that the rumors were just rumors, that the women were just bitter, that my brother, my hero, my protector, was still the person I had always believed him to be. Then the financial news started coming out, reports that Daniel's law firm was under investigation for fraud, that he had been embezzling money from clients for years, that the lavish lifestyle I had always assumed was the result of his success was actually funded by theft and deception and the systematic destruction of other people's trust. The investigation was massive, involving federal agents and private investigators and forensic accountants who spent months combing through the financial records that Daniel had so carefully doctored. And when the full extent of his crimes was revealed, it was staggering. Millions of dollars stolen from clients who had trusted him with their life savings, their retirement funds, their children's college tuition. All of it funneled into offshore accounts and real estate investments and the kind of conspicuous consumption that had always seemed like the natural reward for his success. I watched the news coverage in disbelief, seeing my brother's face on every screen, his mugshot, his perp walk, his handsome features twisted into an expression of shame and defeat that I had never seen on him before, and I felt something inside me shatter, something fundamental, something I wasn't sure would ever be repaired. The trial lasted 6 months, 6 months of testimony and evidence and the slow, painful unraveling of everything Daniel had built, and I sat in the gallery every single day, watching the man I had worshipped my entire life be systematically stripped of his dignity, his reputation, his freedom, and I felt a grief so profound that it was indistinguishable from mourning. My wife Sarah sat beside me, holding my hand, and my children, Emily and Thomas, who had loved their uncle, who had looked up to him the way I had looked up to him when I was their age, they sat with us too, confused and frightened and trying to understand why the person they had trusted was being led away in handcuffs. Daniel was convicted on 37 counts of fraud and embezzlement, and he was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, and I watched them lead him away, and I didn't cry, I couldn't cry. There was a numbness in my chest that made it impossible to feel anything at all. I visited him in prison once, about a year into his sentence, because I needed answers. I needed to understand how the person I had known my entire life could have become the person he had revealed himself to be. And he sat across from me in that cold, sterile visitor's room, and for the first time in our lives, I didn't recognize the man I was looking at. "Why did you do it, Daniel?" I asked him, my voice barely a whisper. "Why did you throw everything away? Why did you destroy our family? Why did you lie to everyone who ever loved you?" He looked at me with those familiar eyes, my brother's eyes, but there was something different in them now, something cold and distant, and he said, because I could, because the money was there, because I was tired of playing by the rules, because I wanted more than the life I had, and I knew that you would never understand. You were always so content with your small town and your small life and your small ambitions, and I wanted something bigger, something more, and I was willing to do whatever it took to get it. He sat there in that visitor's room, looking at the shell of the brother I had loved and admired and trusted with my whole heart, and I realized that the person I was talking to was not my brother, not anymore, not really. The person I had known and loved was gone, had been gone for years, replaced by a stranger who wore his face and spoke with his voice but was fundamentally, irreversibly different from the person I had grown up with. He stood up from that table and I walked out of that prison and I got in my car and I drove home, and I didn't cry, I couldn't cry, there were no tears left in me, just a hollow emptiness that would take years to fill. The next 5 years were a blur of recovery and rebuilding, of slowly, painfully putting the pieces of my life back together, of learning to trust again, of learning to forgive, not because Daniel deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved to be free of the anger and bitterness that was poisoning my ability to live a full and happy life. My wife Sarah was my rock, my anchor, the person who held me together when I was falling apart, who listened to me talk through my confusion and my pain, who reminded me that I was not responsible for my brother's choices, that I had done everything I could to be a good brother and that his betrayal was not my fault. My children, Emily and Thomas, grew up in the shadow of their uncle's crimes, and I tried to protect them from the worst of it, tried to shield them from the shame and the scandal and the constant questions from their friends and classmates. And I watched them process the betrayal in their own ways, Emily with anger, Thomas with confusion, both of them struggling to reconcile the uncle they had loved with the criminal he had become. He started seeing a therapist, a woman named Dr. Patricia Collins, who specialized in family trauma, and she helped me understand that my grief was not just for what Daniel had done, but for the person I had believed him to be, the person I had constructed in my mind and loved and trusted, the person who had never really existed, not in the way I had imagined. I spent hours in her office, talking about my childhood, about my relationship with Daniel, about the ways I had defined myself through him, my identity as his younger brother, my need for his approval, my desperate desire to be seen and recognized and validated by the person I had placed on such a high pedestal. He started writing, something I had never done before, and I wrote about my brother and our family and the betrayal that had torn us apart, and I found that the act of putting my thoughts and feelings on paper was deeply therapeutic, that it helped me process the grief and the anger and the confusion in ways that talking alone could never achieve. He also started reaching out to the other victims of Daniel's crimes, the clients he had stolen from, the women he had deceived, and I apologized to them, not on his behalf, but on my own, because I felt a profound sense of guilt and responsibility, a sense that I should have known, should have seen the signs, should have done something to stop him before he had destroyed so many lives. So many of them accepted my apology, some of them refused to speak to me, and I respected their choices, because I understood that they had suffered in ways I could never fully comprehend, that my brother had taken from them something precious and irreplaceable, and that my words could never undo the damage he had done. He also started a foundation, a small nonprofit that provided financial counseling and support to victims of financial fraud, because I wanted to do something positive with my pain. I wanted to turn the wreckage of my brother's crimes into something that could help other people, something that could honor the memory of the person I had believed my brother to be. The work was hard, often heartbreaking, listening to the stories of people who had lost everything, their savings, their homes, their hopes and dreams, all because they had trusted someone who had betrayed them, and I recognized myself in their stories. Recognized the shame and the guilt and the profound sense of having been foolish and naive. I also found healing in the work, found purpose and meaning in helping others, found a way to redeem the tragedy of my brother's crimes by making sure that something good came out of something so terrible. 5 years after Daniel was sentenced, I received a letter from him, the first communication I had received in all that time, and I opened it with trembling hands, not sure what I would find inside. It was a long letter, handwritten on prison stationery, and in it, Daniel apologized, not for his crimes, but for the pain he had caused me, for the betrayal, for the years of deception, for the way he had shattered my trust and my belief in the goodness of the world. He wrote about his own struggles, his addiction to the thrill of deception, his sense of emptiness that no amount of money or success could fill, his desperation to be seen and admired and respected, even if it meant lying and cheating and stealing to achieve it. He wrote about our childhood, about our parents, about the ways he had always felt inadequate, always felt like he was never good enough, never smart enough, never successful enough, and how that feeling had driven him to take risks that he knew were wrong, to cut corners that he knew were dangerous, to betray the people who loved him because he was too afraid to admit that he needed help. He asked for my forgiveness, not because he deserved it, but because he needed to believe that there was still something redeemable in him, still something that could be saved, still a chance that he could become a better person than the one he had been. He read that letter 3 times, and then I put it in a drawer and I didn't respond, not because I was angry, but because I needed time to process, time to think, time to decide whether forgiveness was something I was capable of giving. He talked to my therapist about it, and she told me that forgiveness was not a gift I gave to Daniel, but a gift I gave to myself, a way of releasing the burden of anger and resentment that was weighing me down and preventing me from moving forward with my life. He thought about it for a long time, and I realized that she was right, that holding on to my anger was not hurting Daniel, it was hurting me, it was poisoning my ability to be fully present in my own life, to love my wife and my children and the people who were still in my life, to find joy and meaning and purpose in the world. He wrote back to Daniel, a short letter, just a few paragraphs, telling him that I forgave him, not because he had earned it, but because I was done carrying the weight of his betrayal, because I had finally understood that forgiving him was the only way I could truly free myself from the prison of anger and resentment I had been living in for the past 5 years. He told him that I hoped he would find peace, that I hoped he would use his time in prison to become a better person, that I hoped someday we could have a real conversation, not about the past, but about the future, about who we could become if we gave ourselves the chance to heal. I haven't received a response yet, and I'm not sure if I will, but I'm okay with that, because I've learned that sometimes the act of forgiveness is enough, that you don't need the other person to accept your forgiveness or even to acknowledge it, you just need to give it, to release it, to let it go. I've also learned something else, something that I think is even more important, that the person I loved and admired and trusted was not my brother, not really, he was a projection, a fantasy. A version of my brother that I had constructed in my mind because I needed to believe in something good, something pure, something that could never be corrupted or destroyed. The real Daniel, the one who exists now, is a stranger, a person I don't fully understand and may never fully understand, and I've made my peace with that, because I've realized that I don't need to understand him to forgive him. I don't need to reconcile with him to love him. I just need to let go of the past and embrace the possibility of a different future, whatever that future might look like. I think about our parents sometimes, about Thomas and Margaret, who raised us to believe in family and loyalty and the sacred bond between brothers, and I wonder if they ever knew, if they ever suspected, if they ever saw the cracks that I was too blind to see. I like to think that they would have forgiven him, that they would have understood that the person he became was a product of his own struggles and insecurities, that the love they gave him was not wasted, even if he was unable to receive it in the way they intended. I also think about my children, about Emily and Thomas, who are growing up in a world that is more complicated and more challenging than the one I grew up in, and I hope that I am teaching them the right lessons, that I am showing them that family is not about perfection, it's about showing up, about being present, about loving each other even when it's hard, even when it's painful, even when it feels impossible. I have learned that the bond between brothers, or between any family members, is not a guarantee of loyalty or love, it is an invitation to build something real, something lasting, something that can survive the inevitable struggles and conflicts and betrayals that come with being human. I have also learned that forgiveness is not a destination, it is a journey, a process, something that you choose over and over again, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Because holding on to anger and resentment will eventually destroy you from the inside out. I still have moments of sadness, moments when I miss the brother I thought I had, when I grieve the relationship we could have had, the future we could have shared, the bond that was shattered by his choices and his lies. But those moments are fewer now, and they are softer, less painful, and I am grateful for that, grateful for the healing that has come, grateful for the people who have supported me through the darkest moments of my life, grateful for the chance to start over, to rebuild, to create something new from the ashes of everything that was destroyed. I have written a book about my experience, a memoir called The Brother I Knew, and I hope that it reaches people who have experienced similar betrayals, who have felt the devastating shock of discovering that someone they trusted was not who they appeared to be. I hope that it gives them hope. I hope that it reminds them that they are not alone, that there are others who understand, that it is possible to survive even the most devastating betrayals and find a way to live a full and meaningful life. I have also started speaking at conferences and support groups, sharing my story with others who are struggling to heal from betrayal, and I have found that the act of telling my story, of being vulnerable and honest about the pain I have experienced, has been one of the most healing things I have ever done. I am not the same person I was before Daniel's betrayal. I am different, changed, scarred by the experience, but I am also stronger, wiser, more compassionate, and I have learned that the things that break us can also remake us, if we let them, if we are willing to do the hard work of healing and growth and transformation. I think about Daniel sometimes, about the boy who taught me to ride a bike and defended me from bullies and walked me down the aisle at my wedding, and I hold on to those memories, I cherish them, even though they are tainted by everything that came after, because they are still part of who I am, still part of my story, still part of the person I have become. I don't know if Daniel will ever be released from prison, I don't know if he will ever have a chance to build a new life, to become a better person, to find the peace that has eluded him for so long, and I've made my peace with not knowing, because some questions don't have answers and some futures are unknowable, and the only thing we can control is our own response to the events that befall us. I have learned that family is not just about blood, it's about choice, it's about the people we choose to love and support and stand by, even when it's hard, even when it's painful, even when it would be easier to walk away. I have chosen to forgive my brother, not because he asked for it, but because I needed to, because holding on to the anger and resentment was poisoning my ability to live a full and happy life, because I finally understood that forgiveness is not about the other person, it's about freeing yourself from the burden of pain that you have been carrying for too long. If you are listening to this and you are carrying the weight of someone else's betrayal, if you have been hurt by someone you trusted, if you are struggling to find a way to move forward, I want you to hear me when I say that it is possible, that you can survive this, that you can find healing and hope and happiness again, even when it feels impossible. The people who really love you will still be there, the ones who are meant to be in your life will find their way to you, and the ones who were only using you will fall away, and that is not a loss, that is a gift, because it clears the space for the people who actually matter, the ones who show up when things get hard and help you carry the weight when it feels too heavy to bear alone. I have found a new family, one that chose me, friends who became brothers and sisters, a community of people who understand that the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, and I am grateful for every single one of them. I am grateful for the pain too, as strange as that sounds, because without it, I would never have become the person I am today, I would never have learned the lessons I have learned, I would never have found the strength and resilience that now define my life. If this story meant something to you, if you felt that familiar ache of betrayal, if you've ever had to walk away from someone you love to protect yourself, take a second and hit that like button, but only if it really resonates with you. And subscribe to this channel because there are more stories coming, stories about survival and healing in the messy, beautiful, complicated journey of being human. And drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now, because I want to know that somewhere out there, someone else is fighting the same fight, carrying the same weight, and finding their way through the darkness one day at a time. And remember, you are not alone, you have never been alone, and the love you carry inside you is strong enough to carry you through even the darkest nights, even the hardest moments, even the most devastating betrayals, because love, real love, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and true, that kind of love never truly dies, it just changes shape, and it will find its way back to you, always, no matter what. And if you've ever loved someone who couldn't love you back the way you needed, I hope you know that the love you gave was never wasted. It was never meaningless, it was never anything less than a gift, and that gift will come back to you in ways you can't yet imagine, in people who will show up and stay and love you without condition, in moments of grace and connection and the kind of profound understanding that only comes from having walked through the fire and come out the other side. So keep going, keep hoping, keep loving, because that is what makes us human, that is what makes us strong, that is what makes us capable of surviving even the worst that life can throw at us. And I will see you in the next story. I will see you on the other side of the pain. I will see you when the sun rises again and the world feels new and full of possibility. And until then, take care of yourself, take care of the people who love you, and remember that you are worthy of love, you are worthy of happiness, you are worthy of everything good that this world has to offer. And I believe in you. I believe in your ability to heal and grow and find your way, just as I have found mine. And that is the most important lesson of all, that no matter what happens, no matter how dark the night, there is always a dawn coming, there is always hope on the horizon, and the love you give to the world will always find its way back to you, even if it takes a lifetime to arrive.